Increasing community engagement is a primary goal in K-12 districts today, but how do you get involved in this important initiative as a CTO? In this presentation, you will hear how two CTOs made their impact on the district's community engagement through broadening the reach of information to the community, creating a district brand, and more. We will take a close look at their promotion, technology, and communication strategies so you have the tools to start driving engagement in your district. I'm Alice Owen, Executive Director of the Texas K-12 CTO Council, and will be your moderator for this session today. Our guest speakers today are Lenny Schad, the Chief Technology Information Officer at Houston Independent School District, and Steve Young, Chief Technology Officer at Judson Independent School District, both from Texas. I'm sorry, but Richard Ellis was not able to join our meeting today. So without further delay, we'll get started with our first speaker. So Lenny, the microphone is all yours.
All right, perfect, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. As Al said, I am the CIO for Houston Independent School District, and what I'm going to talk about today is how communication and marketing can have an impact on district-wide projects, particularly those projects that are going to have an impact on community perception or what the role of education plays in the community. And so I'm going to start off talking about just digital transformation because that's what I've been most familiar with, and that certainly has a broad-reaching impact not only with the infrastructure of the school system, infrastructure not only technology but just instructional infrastructure, but it also reaches very broadly out to the community and the vendors as well. So as you sit and think about the role of the CIO and what the impact should be for a CIO in a digital transformation, the first thing is they have to be considered a member of the senior management team. And when I say a member of the senior management team, I think we've all been around this long enough to know that an org chart doesn't fix or simply allow that to happen. You can be a member or considered a member of the senior management team no matter where you report. For the CIO or the person in charge of technology, the most important thing is that they are part of the digital transformation strategy planning. Technology is one of the key elements in allowing this digital transformation, or quite honestly, allowing any enterprise project to be successful. So they have to be part of that initial project management, and they have to be also considered a thought partner. One of the things that is so exciting about being a CIO is you're pervasive in just about every facet of the organization. So as you are considered a thought partner, you bring so much more to the table than simply talking about bits and bytes. And once you establish yourself as that thought partner, you'll find that you become much more critical and strategic in the decisions that the district is making. As it relates to a digital transformation, you know, technology is not the silver bullet that allows this to happen. So it's all about being part of this process to make sure people understand it's an enabler. And then you have to be considered a problem solver in this endeavor, because there's going to be a lot of things that come up, and you have the ability to solve the problems and look at them from a completely different perspective. And I think that's one of the things that I've seen in both of the districts that I've been in is, you know, sometimes you can't see the forest through the trees. And so it's really important to be able to bring an outside perspective and think about things differently, because that forces everybody else to take a step back and do the same. From a communication perspective, the CIO must be able to take the tech speak and put it into education speak. And, you know, we've heard this forever that, you know, we need to be able to not talk tech. But I think that there's a difference between saying not talk tech and not talk tech but in education. And what I see is people are very articulate in maybe explaining technology, but what they're not very good at doing is translating that into how that could potentially impact an education setting. So you have to be able to translate that and say, here's the techie side of this, and here's how it can really impact the education. They have to be able to speak to a broad range of audiences. You have to be very comfortable sitting in front of the school board, in front of the superintendent. You have to be comfortable in front of principals and teachers. And most importantly, you have to be able to relate to the community. And that's such a critical part when you think about communication and marketing, is you are the voice, and in most cases, you're going to be the person that gets a brunt of the questions. You have to be able to answer them in a way that parents understand, and you also have to do it in a way that displays confidence in what you're saying, confidence in what the district is doing, because that is easily picked up by the audience. You have to be able to converse about curriculum instruction. This isn't just, like I said, a technology initiative. So if you truly are going to be considered a thought partner and a problem-solving partner, you have to really understand what curriculum instruction is trying to accomplish, and you have to speak their language. And you have to be able to talk to principals from a leadership, from a classroom management perspective, because then that's when they are going to start to truly relate to you and believe what you're saying. Not only can you speak that language, but then you can articulate how technology can have an impact and what they can expect. There's a lot of uncertainty out there about technology, particularly as it becomes more impactful in the day-to-day operations of an instruction. And so you have to be able to say, here's how it can impact it, and here's what you can expect. Here are some bumps in the roads that we predict, and here's how we're here to help smooth those roads out. And then you have to be able to, in this new wave of communication, you have to be able to educate and leverage all the new avenues of communication, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or all the different Web 2.0 tools. Those are great assets. But typically what happens is those assets get put into place, and then you start reacting to situations that you should have predicted but you didn't. As the CIO, you should be the one sitting there saying, these are great tools, but have we thought about this? Have we thought about policy changes? Have we thought about how it could potentially be used? So again, this enables you to be considered one of those thought partners and problem solvers. COSN has a lot of really good resources out there that will allow you to take advantage of these things, like the Essential Skills Framework, the CETL certification, Mobile Learning Framework. There's also just simply networking with your peers. That can really help out a lot. So as I sit down and I look back on the two initiatives that I've really been heavily involved in, both a BYOD and a one-to-one, what I've come to find out is that there are 3 cornerstones for success. And these cornerstones aren't anything that's going to surprise people, but I think it's how you apply these cornerstones, and most importantly for today's conversation, how does communication and marketing play into each of these cornerstones? So I'm going to break them down a little bit. From a leadership perspective, it's all about defining the why and the how. And this is really important because most people skip that first step and they jump immediately to talking about how are we going to solve this problem. And what that does is that doesn't give your stakeholders a foundation from which they can accept how you're doing it. You have to spend time articulating why do you want to do this. And when I talk to school systems out there, a lot of times I ask them this question, and what I get back is, well, why we want to do this is because we think devices are really important and we want to get the devices in the kids' hands, or this software application is really important. That is not answering the why. That's telling me how you're going to do it. So as you sit down from a leadership perspective, you have to focus on defining the why. The why is, something about this is how the kids are learning. We feel it's important in preparing for 21st century skills. That tells people, and that most importantly, that tells parents, why do you think this is important? And then you can move to how we hope to accomplish this. And the how can get into a little bit of details. But as I said, spend time talking about the why first. As it relates to communication, this is where in the defining the why and the how, this is where you give your project or your initiative an identity. And that's all about branding. So through your conversations in leadership about why and how, you establish this initiative and you establish an identity for it. In HISD, our identity for our one-to-one initiative is Power Up. Everybody in our community knows what Power Up is. You can go down to downtown businesses who are associated with HISD, and they will be able to tell you exactly what Power Up is. You can talk to an elementary teacher, and they know what it is. You can talk to our foundation partners, and they know what it is. So we've established Power Up is about transforming education. It's about transforming instruction. So there's the identity. You have to focus on, for us, making sure people understand the core why. And for us, it's not about the device, right? For us, it's about transforming teaching and transforming learning. And the way we do that is through changing our instruction, providing digital content. So it's more, it really has to link back to your why statement, because that makes it easy for people to start understanding. Power Up is not about a device, it's about changing instruction. It has to be easy. This becomes your elevator speech. Your brand is your elevator speech. So when you're in the grocery store or when you're at an event and people want to ask you questions about this, you have an elevator speech directly linked back to your brand that is simple, that's quick, that people can grab onto. And the other thing is that I've seen a lot of people try and establish a brand, but the brand really didn't have a firm identity. It wasn't linked back to why they were doing it, and it never stuck. And so you had people trying to force feed a brand and identity, and if the stakeholders can't embrace it, it's a really difficult thing to get done. So from a leadership perspective, the most important thing that comes out of the leadership cornerstone is branding and giving your initiative an identity. The next thing that we talk about is strategy. And this is really important because I think what you're finding is, 10 years ago, big initiatives, if they had anything to do with technology typically owned them. And that just is not the right strategy to take. Most of the time, unless it's just purely an infrastructure, putting a new phone system in or maybe changing out an email system, most of the time, any other thing that goes on, technology should be a player at the table, but they should not be the champion and they should not own it. And for us in HISD, what we did is we decided that our transformation, our Power Up initiative really was a district initiative. And so we identified a cross-functional team that would make up our project team. And as you can see, it's made up of anybody who had a dog in the fight. So we have our curriculum team that's part of it. We have our professional development. We have communication, technology, instructional tech, and school support. And they've been on Power Up from the very beginning. And one of the things that we did early on is we made sure that everybody understood what their role is in making Power Up successful. Because it's not just a matter of being a member of the team. It's a matter of understanding what your role is as a member of the team and making this initiative successful. Parent and community engagement, all of these teams understand what their link is out to the community. And you look, we have school support, which are your principals. We have our communication team. So everybody really understands, okay, what is your linkage out to the community? What is your linkage out to the parents? And it also clearly defines, what are the channels of communication. The other thing that our strategy encapsulated was measurement criteria. Because as we start to communicate out, the quickest way to dispel rumors is to dispel them with facts. And so we established early on what are our measurement criteria going to be, what are our milestones, how are we going to know what we were expecting to get done is getting done, and we market those and we sell those out to the community. And so each of these work streams, they understand and they have measurement criteria assigned to each of their work processes. So at the end of the day, when the rumors start to come about, we can kill them with data and we can kill them with facts. When you look at the communication part of the strategy cycle, the most important thing out of this is now you see we have a number of independent work groups now coming together with a project. The most challenging part about this is ensuring a consistent message, because this is the quickest way for your initiative to really run into trouble. So part of getting this work group aligned and together from the very beginning is understanding the consistency in why decisions were made, why we are taking the approach, and what we're doing to implement. And that ensures consistency in messaging. The other thing that we've done is we don't want everybody, just because you're a member of the Power Up team doesn't mean that you are the spokesperson for the project. And so what we've done in this is we've defined clear channels of communication, meaning who is going to talk about this initiative and who is not going to talk about this initiative. And we make sure every member of the team is very clear in what their role is in that channel, or if they don't have a role in the channel. And this ties back directly to my first bullet, which is consistency of messaging. From an ownership perspective, everybody understands, again, what their role is, who they are. The other members of the team understand who they are. They understand when communication happens. They understand what the communication is going to be and the mechanisms of how we're going to do this. And a great example of this is when you do hit bumps in the road, this is when you find out if your process is good. Because, you know, one of the things that's happened to us a couple of times is there's been stories that have broken. The project team actually came together prior to me as the executive sponsor walking in the room. They understood what the story was, and by the time I walked in the room, they had defined what the issue was. They identified where it was occurring, who was going to be responsible for communicating, what the course of action was to correct, and what the channels were. So I basically walked in, they presented this to me, and in 15 minutes we had our resolution from a communication path moving forward. That told me that this thing was really effective, because that typically could have eaten up 2 or 3 days trying to get the right people in the room and explain to them, you know, what's going on. Again, having everybody on this project team from the very beginning, we didn't have to go through all those gymnastics. They had been together with us from the very beginning. They knew the decisions, why we were making them, and so we were simply making the course correction, and we were planning to communicate that out. So that worked very well. On the measurement reporting, I think the thing that's really important about this is it varies depending on the audience. And typically what I've seen with a lot of measurement reporting is it's kind of one-stop shopping. We have one report, and we're going to give it to everybody from the school board out to parents. And it loses its effect. The school board is concerned about one area of data, and parents are concerned about another, as are principals and teachers and technology and, you know, every member of the team. So you really have to target your measurement criteria and your measurement reporting to what your stakeholder audience values the most, and make sure that you're taking that into consideration. The last piece of the strategy of the cornerstones are expectation management. And I think this is probably one of the most critical areas, and it's one that's often overlooked. And, you know, when you think about expectation management as it relates to a digital conversion, this is a cultural change. We are philosophically changing the way teachers have instructed for years. Pacing is incredibly critical. In other words, you cannot expect 100% adoption out of the gate. And it has to be clearly communicated out to all of your stakeholders what your expectations are. They have to be realistic, and you have to understand that adoption will vary by campus, and it all goes back to the leadership of that campus. So you cannot expect this all to happen at one time and the same way. And if you're clear about this from the beginning, you can sense the pressure goes away, because people understand this is an evolution, it's going to take time, and this is how we're going to move forward. From a communication perspective, the most important thing that comes out of the expectation management is you want your stakeholders that you're communicating with to understand why you're doing it. You're not looking for acceptance at this point. You're simply looking for people to understand why you're taking this on. Again, you communicate that you're realistic in that this is a cultural change. You're going to talk through what the risks are associated with this. You're going to acknowledge that this will be bumpy, and that while we have planned to the very best of our ability, we will know that there will be surprises, and we commit to you to reacting to those bumps in the road quickly and making sure everybody's aware of it, and that there are open communication channels. So people have an avenue, should they have questions or concerns, that they can get it to the project team. So this coming out of expectation management, it's all about seeking understanding and making sure expectations are realistic and people understand what they are. When you get through those legs, then you can go into something that I think is overlooked in every single one of these initiatives, and that's the marketing. And the marketing really happens after you feel like you've spent the time with your community on communicating and getting a foundation of understanding. Now they come out, and now you're seeking for acceptance. And the way that you seek for acceptance is you really put a marketing hat on, and you're selling people on this. You're selling them on why they should get excited. And so your marketing strategy is all about building excitement, generating commitment, overwhelming commitment. So when those bumps do occur, the reaction isn't abandonment. The reaction is, how are we going to fix this and keep moving forward? You celebrate the small victories, and there are so many small victories along the way. You just have to keep your eyes out for it. It makes your initiative very visible. Again, if you have a strong brand that has an identity that has stuck in your community, you can make it visible. And you use all the various media outlets that are at your disposal. You use TV, we've used radio, we've used print, and we've used online publications. So the marketing side of this, again, is after you feel like you've put in the effort and there's good understanding, marketing is all about getting acceptance. The last phase of this is just talking through some of the avenues of communication. And for HISD, we use a number of avenues. You know, we have Facebook accounts. We use Twitter. Twitter is probably our most valuable communication tool because it's a way for us to be at, for instance, teacher training or student training and take a picture and tweet it out. You know, HISD students getting their laptops or HISD teachers learning how to do digital citizenship. So it's a really quick way to get good stories out very quickly. We have a district website. If you go to our district website, you can see the Power Up. It has its own section. So our identity is absolutely on our front page, but you can click to it, and you can get just about any answer you have, you can get it from our website. We have our schedules out there. We have, you know, facts. We have questions. We have digital citizenship. This is what we are making as that open communication channel. So if you do have a question, go there and get it. We use a lot of e-news, a lot of media events. We call in the TV stations and the local paper at every one of our rollouts, trying to get attention. We don't do it for every one of them. We do it for the select because, again, we don't want to wear this out, but we want there to be excitement from the TV stations. We've reached out to a lot of foundations just communicating what we're doing and how we're doing it. I think it's important for these funding sources to really be excited about some of the great work that's going on in school systems. That doesn't happen just hoping that it's going to be read somewhere. You have to initiate that. We're working with the City of Houston in partnership and linking in our libraries and our community centers, making them aware that, you know, kids are now going to have laptops. They need a place to go with connectivity. So we're really starting to get a partnership with our local government. Community partners are great because they have another source of funding. So if you can get them excited about this, they can also help market it. Conferences are a great way to get your message out, and there are a lot of people out there at conferences that will then feed to foundations, that will feed to publications, that then help get your message out. Publications, vendors are another great source. You know, they get a lot of money off of us as school systems, and in return, we should expect something. So one of the things that we've done is we really work with our vendor partners to help get the marketing out, help sell the story of what we're doing, how we're doing it, how we're being successful. It adds a layer of credibility. Parent organizations are a great source just to get that support. It's much more impactful to have parent organizations come to a school board and talk about how well you did your rollout, how well the teachers were prepared, how well or how little it impacted the class day, than having you as a central administration team come in. So getting them aligned with what you're doing and getting them comfortable coming in saying, yeah, we want to tell people what a good job you did. And then tech showcases are another great avenue. For us, we're using tech showcases for our middle school kids. We want them to be excited about what they're going to get when they come to high school. And so we have a lot of showcases planned where the middle school kids are going to come in and we're going to talk with parents. And parents are going to see how we're leveraging technology and how we're changing instruction and hopefully start to trickle that down and that excitement just beyond the high school level. So those are some of the avenues that we have. And at this point, I think I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Young.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lenny. That was fantastic. You can go ahead, Alice. It's fine.
No, I was just going to introduce you, Steve, but Lenny already did that. Thanks.
Well,
Great.
thank you all. My name is Steve Young. As you heard, I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Judson ISD, and it's certainly hard to follow up. Lenny did such a great job informing us on the strategies that districts and CTOs and CIOs can undertake to improve communication and have successful projects. And since Lenny focused on the real strategic initiatives that need to be undertaken, I'm going to go a little bit more to the tactical level and talk about some of the things we've done here at Judson that are more like everyday type initiatives or things you might do to help foster communication and outreach. I'm IT as a whole has kind of a bad reputation overall across the country and schools and business as well. We don't always have a good reputation for being folks that really communicate well with our constituents, whether that be our internal employees, parents, other departments. So that's an area that IT really has a lot of ground to cover and to improve upon. And I don't know that a lot of IT managers or CIOs really believe that they play a crucial role in facilitating communication, but they absolutely do. And I think so much so that if CIOs don't grasp this and grab a hold onto it and really push this, they could, and to some extent, run the risk of becoming a little bit irrelevant to their organization, especially as the cloud initiatives take hold and other departments and schools get the opportunity and ability to basically take on IT initiatives without you. And so this communication piece, this outreach, this collaboration is critical. So let me talk about some of the ways we focused on communicating. Some of these are really traditional ways. Some of them are a little bit more modern, a little more innovative. Several years back, probably about 6-7 years ago, we actually started off with a real basic thing for our IT department in our school district, and that was just working on a newsletter. And it sounds so simplistic, yet it's been one of those ways we found that we start dialogues, we start conversations, because if we tell our constituents what we're doing, and the constituents can be the community, our employees, those are the two biggest groups that our newsletter would target. If those folks are informed, or at least we've tried to work with them to tell them what's going on, what initiatives are coming their way, what we can do for you, how we can help. A lot of times it goes a long way to staving off problems later on, because it starts those dialogues early on. So we might have how-to articles, we might have advice on, how to stay safe online, how to protect students and how to protect your identity. There's a lot of instructional things that we partner in here with, so a lot of the instructional initiatives will be highlighted in these newsletters. And there's a link. Certainly you can go in and steal things. We don't care. That's why it's here. We put it out on the internet for anyone to use. But it's one of those simplistic things. The biggest drawback to a lot of these initiatives is time. We're all strapped for time. But sometimes to invest a little time up front, I think, goes a long ways in saving time at the back end, because if you can answer the questions, stave off some of the frustration, it'll probably help you free up some time later on down the stretch. All right. Lenny mentioned a lot of the little tactics they use, and we use a lot of those same tactics. PR is critical to school districts these days for so many reasons, and certainly to initiatives like Lenny's. No one wants to have that LA type of experience with their iPads. So it's really critical to stay on top of PR. And while that may not traditionally be the domain of the CIO, it's becoming increasingly so. If nothing else, in the very basic way, all of us really need to work very closely with our communications officers about establishing a social media strategy. Sometimes a lot of them don't have that experience either, or comfort level with digital, and we need to make sure we can help them become digital and become digital ourselves at the same time. So certainly as we're working with the communications departments, we want to be using those same tools ourselves. So as Lenny said, we can use it for positive experiences. We can tweet out pictures, tweet out events that are going on, showcase on our websites. Once again, we have some branded initiatives as well, just like HISD has, where we've branded our BYOD program, and those are really important. That's really part of getting that word out there and helping that understanding with what is going on in the community and why we're doing something. So certainly we have a website that highlights all of those things. We also blog a lot of those things. So sometimes a blog serves as a way to just take a little snapshot of a larger initiative or a project and just highlight what's going on. So I maintain that blog as well. If nothing else, one of the things that we've really found is as we put these things on our website, as we tweet them, as we blog, it drives media interest in our district. And so magazines, journalists, newspapers, the like, a lot of them then end up reaching out to us and wanting to know more about what we're doing, which again really helps drive a really good image for our district. And we all need that. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of people looking at public schools and targeting them, so getting that interest out there and that positive PR is always a great thing. All right. This one's a really interesting one to me. It's been near and dear to me and something I stress really hugely with my staff. While it may not be on a very strategic level, I kind of feel like we all have a lot of nuts and bolts we really need to pay a lot of attention to. And so sometimes those details are really important. And one of the ones for us is really gauging customer satisfaction. And so the most basic way we do this is on our help desk incidents, which most of my staff touch at some point or another. Every time we close one of those incidents, we immediately survey a customer to make sure they are satisfied with the work we did. Because at the end of the day, that satisfaction drives everything. And if satisfaction goes down or tanks, you might as well, update your resume and move on. But at the end of the day, we want to have successful projects. And so getting successful down at this very basic level helps breed successful projects. So we track this very much daily. We do other surveys as well when we're in the planning process. There's much larger, more detailed surveys we might undertake for, say, technology planning or other initiatives. But customer satisfaction is one we work on every single day. In fact, I'll be working this week with my staff on it. Several years back, Judson ISD, and this really was driven out of our technology department in collaboration with several other programs in the district. We really looked at how can we get the message out to our community, and for us that was a bit of a challenge. We have a very high free and reduced population in our district, and we found that in a lot of that population as well as some of the other, we had a lot of folks that didn't necessarily have email or internet access. The one common factor, of course, that we pretty much found in all those homes were phones. And so we worked very closely. Back at the time, it was kind of a pretty cutting-edge initiative 7 or 8 years ago to look at a mass communication system. And of course, most folks are pretty familiar with these now. They're multi-modal. Certainly, most systems will send email, SMS, text messages, and phone calls. A lot of them take it a bit further and now venture into social media, so that in one pane of glass, your communications department, your principals, your other leaders can go ahead and get messages out to the community. The one drawback, I think, to a lot of these systems is they tend to be a very one-sided conversation. And we may delve into that a little bit more. Obviously, social media, though, can spark a two-way conversation. So if you use these systems to publish out, you can eventually start some conversations, although not all of them may be good, as I think Lenny alluded to earlier. But that's been a very powerful system for us. We're certainly not going away from it. It's just not the only way we want to communicate anymore. And probably our number one outreach for our district, really communication-wise, started off as a pretty small initiative for our district. It was something we were interested in. We didn't have a lot of money necessarily to dive into developing applications, but we knew, looking at our website traffic and our statistics, we saw that we were having a huge amount of people starting to come into our web through mobile devices, and that number has gone up and up and up the last several years. And what we're finding and what the numbers are showing are that users spend more and more time each day or each month in apps than mobile web. And so we were really kind of figuring we needed to address this mobile trend. So we embarked on the road of looking at how we can get a mobile app for our district. And there's lots of ways to do this, and I'm not going to delve into this. There's lots of third parties that do this. We decided to do it ourselves. So we tackled this. And the real goal here for us was to take a lot of our traditional communications that we have and roll it into an app such that we're not recreating the wheel. We're not recreating content. We have a lot of things that we put out there for the public. Let's put them into the app just to make it more convenient, because that's the way people want to get to their content on their phone. They don't necessarily want to go to mobile web. They will when they have to, but if they don't have to, they'd rather get it through the app. So our app really targeted parents as the primary constituents, as well as the community and students as well. Even employees use it as well, but that was not our primary target. So when we launched this in 2012, at the start of the year, we really did a fairly quick initiative with this, and we decided to launch it without what we knew would be the core data that parents and students want, which are grades, attendance, and a lot of that data. We launched without that, but that gave us kind of a soft launch so that we could work out bugs, gauge some customer feedback, and kind of tweak the app a little bit. And so during that early launch, we had real simple stuff in here: news, events, calendar information, holidays, school contact information. None of that not important, but it wasn't that core data that we knew would really spark parent and student interest. But it gave us time to get it going, get it working, and this ended up being a multi-award winning app for our district. It's been highlighted in several places, including our Digital Education Achievement Award that we won last year for this. So that was a really kind of proud moment for us. So there's a lot more information about this out there, but the thing that we really put in here that's really key was our parent center. So we have developed our own parent portal. And this is something we did a number of years ago, and we keep adding on to it and growing it every year. And so being homegrown, it lets us pull data from a lot of different sources that you may not get out of your SIS vendors or student information system vendors portal. So we put a lot of data in one place. All of that is exposed in our mobile app. It's just an icon there, parents log in, and then they have access to a multitude of data about their students, as well as students can do it as well. So obviously we have grades and attendance, we have health data, we have meal balances, bus routes, and I know I'm missing some things. There's a lot in there, library books and the like. It's really amazing what's in there, and it's really a great tool for us to stay engaged with parents. And so what's really nice about the tool is we asked parents kind of what they needed, and their number one complaint, the funny thing is when we were asking about features in the app, their number one complaint was lack of timeliness at grades. No surprise there. As a parent, you're always trying to watch, when teachers put in grades and how did a student do on a test or quiz or assignment. That was the number one request. So one of the things we decided into the app that we do is go ahead. We can't make teachers enter grades quicker per se. We can certainly advise, but the app can't make them do it quicker. But what we can do is help facilitate that student-teacher that parent-teacher conversation. So in the app, we allow parents to reach out to teachers directly from the app, and then when the parents reach out to a teacher, the teachers log into the web, reply to the message, and so all that communication is actually self-contained within our portal and the app, and it gives a really good tracking that teachers and parents are staying in communication with one another. So it's just another way to facilitate that dialogue, because ultimately that's really important to student success. If the parents are involved and talking to the teachers, that really helps, especially at the secondary levels where parents traditionally haven't had as much school contact as they have at the elementary level. So what's been great about all this is we can watch the numbers, and we've seen our numbers just skyrocket. I think we had something like 400,000 mobile logins last year. It's just phenomenal. We know people are using it, and it's something they really want. So we're going to continue down this path. It's really exciting. I think as we move increasingly into digital learning, kind of like along the lines of what Lenny in Houston's doing, I think we'll try to look in further tie-ins to our mobile with that, because ultimately it's all related. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Alice.
Well, thank you, Steve and Lenny, for the great presentation. Those wonderful strategies. And now it's time to open up the session for some questions and answers. And for those questions that don't get answered today, we'll place a Q&A document on the website with the recording. So please type in your questions in the question area on the control panel. But I have a few questions while we're waiting. I know, Steve, you talked a lot about all the communication tools, and Lenny, you did too, about Twitter and Facebook and blogs and portals. What are some strategies you all use to help you manage all those communication tools that you have? And I'll take answers from either one.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, boy, that's a tough question, because ultimately, when you put out tools, there's certainly probably a reaction from staff at the district that this is one more thing, and in all reality, it is one more thing, right? I mean, we can barely keep up with our email now. There's Twitter feeds and LinkedIn messages and all these different avenues coming at you, and there's no easy answer. But staying silent's not a good answer either, right? People get very frustrated when they don't get responses, and that's certainly a common gripe with constituents in school systems. So I don't have a great answer for that, but I think a lot of it's just staying focused on the important social media pieces, figuring out a strategy to to keep an eye on these and monitor it. There are services that can do some of these things. We haven't really gone down that path here yet. We actually are looking at a new communication tool, and it's not featured in this presentation, but we're looking at basically what's going to become kind of like a help desk system for the school district staff and for parents in the community to use. So it'll basically monitor, provide a way for everyone to ensure that parents and the community's questions have been answered and that they went to the right person rather than just, a lost email kind of thing. So once again, that's not really answering your question per se. It's more the political answer of trying to, walk around it a little bit. But it's not easy. I mean, time's a huge struggle for all of us. So it's just figuring out what's important, staying on top of it, and you have to dedicate some time to these things.
Lenny, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, the thing that I would say is the communication tools can be very powerful, but you have to go into it with your eyes wide open. And what I mean by that is, as I had mentioned in my presentation, you have to define who and what are going to be the sources of communication. And I think if you go into this blindly just making a tool available, you're going to open yourself up for a lot of unexpected consequences as a result of using social media, and you run the risk of your community really saying, no, we want to kill it. And so, I would just strongly suggest that you think through who will have the ability to tweet, what should they tweet. So there's a lot of education that has to go along with this, because people, and we see it every day, we have teachers and principals and employees doing the wrong things on the internet. And so, there still has to be a huge professional development effort put around what do we want to communicate via social media. And so, I don't think it's just a matter of putting the tool out. The other thing that I would say is you have to expect the communication to be two-way. So a lot of the tools that you use, your problems are not going to center around what you as a district are communicating. That's going to center around what your community, what your parents, what your students, and what your teachers are saying, communicating back to you, or communicating about you. And so, going into this on what are you going to do when there's threats made by a student on Twitter, what kind of, action plan goes in immediately about that. And that kind of dovetails in with what Steve was talking about. There are a lot of tools out there that you can implement. In fact, we're getting ready to implement 2 of them that actually crawl the Twitter space and the Facebook space, specifically looking for verbiage that links HISD to anything as an attempt to try and get ahead of this. The worst thing that happens is if a parent calls you and say, hey, I saw this Twitter posting about, a kid saying he's going to do something at a campus tomorrow. We want to be ahead of that. So I guess I would just say it's much broader than simply implementing a tool. There has to be policy and procedure considerations, training, and then you have to consider the two-way side of it.
And if I could add one more thing on there, Lenny, because, you brought up great points. It is a two-way conversation. And one thing we've found with social media and kind of the anonymity of a lot of these digital conversations is that a lot of times they can end up becoming a different conversation or have a different tone because of that I can't even say it, anonymity. So here I having trouble speaking today. But at the end of the day, what we find is that sometimes these conversations can escalate a little bit. And so sometimes it's really good to kind of take a conversation that's digital and try to make it old school again. And it may mean a phone call, a face-to-face meeting to get in front of those problems that can occur. Because sometimes people want to hide behind that social media and maybe say something that they would not say in person. And sometimes it's just based on a misunderstanding. So I wanted to throw that little comment out there.
That's great. There's kind of a follow-up question from one of our participants today, and asking a question about they're a small tech department in a small district. Where's the best place for them to start on social media? Does anybody want to give them some strategies about that? Facebook, Twitter, where would they start?
My 2 cents would be that Twitter would probably be the easiest thing to start out with, because Facebook brings in with it a lot of inherent problems. Twitter's quick and easy. Setting up a Twitter account and getting people to subscribe to that. It's limited in what you can say. It's limited in what you can post. And so that's a good segue into getting people to understand you're kind of entering this market. Facebook just brings into it a lot more potential for problems. And so I would say as you get more mature and your community gets more mature in the adoption of social media, that you could potentially look at that. But Twitter would be my recommendation.
I think that's a great one, Lenny. It's just so easy and quick, and
yeah.
Everything that's put out is out there for everyone, and it's pretty simple.
And it's so
I would
short.
say, sorry?
I said it's so short in how much they can type. You're kind of putting them in a really tight box, which is really
absolutely.
Good.
On the same token, that puts you in a box as well. So I would couple that with probably having a really strong website as well. It doesn't need to be thousands of pages or anything like that, but highlight key things and keep that up to date. And then you can always, in a tweet, you can reference back to a page with deeper information if need be.
I had another question that I'm sure that school districts get a lot of negative press sometimes. I know we've seen some big districts, being pounded about their one-to-one initiatives. Think of a specific time where you might have had some negative press or the potential negative press, and how have you handled that? Either one of you.
I can answer that, because every time LA Unified, LA Unified and HISD kicked their initiatives off at virtually the same time. And so every time LA Unified was in the paper, I would get the calls from the same publications in LA, the Houston group. And so, it's not even that we hit a bump in our road in initiative. It was that other initiatives were running into issues out there. And, people are just looking for, some type of validation, either that this is a bad strategy to take, or there are some places that choose to do it a different way. When I got those calls, what I typically focused on was not about LA and their situation, because I'm not close to it, and I have no, it would be very irresponsible for me to make a comment on that. What I did was I talked about what HISD's strategy was. And if we were in the same cycle where the issue happened in LA, what I talked about was what we were doing different. And what I talked about was what we changed as a result of what we saw from LA, if we changed anything. So I always tied it back to what HISD was doing. I never tried to compare HISD and LA Unified. I always just focused on that. If it was something LA encountered that we weren't in that phase yet or we hadn't seen, I talked about what we were doing, what we had planned to do when we got to that phase of the project, and how maybe we had made some changes. So, short answer for me was I never got into the mud fight that I think people wanted us to get into. And I always just focused on what HISD was doing, and I never made any judgment calls at all.
It's obviously worked, Lenny, because I haven't seen any bad press about Houston, but there's a lot about it.
Oh, man, Alice, you never say that. Knock on wood, rub a rabbit's foot, do something now.
Well, we hope it continues to be positive. Steve, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think there's some TV stations driving Lenny's way right after that comment. One of the things I've seen is the ability of some of these communications tools to really help, kind of squash what Lenny's talking about, is those reactions to things that go on. And so, sometimes there's immediate things that happen in a district that aren't always positive, right? And so part of the use of these tools is to go ahead and get that district side of the story out quickly and truthfully. And so that's really important, because if that's not done, a lot of times someone else is going to write your story for you. And so if you can get out and put that story out there, your mass communication type tools are great for this. You can get calls out to parents, text messages, and sometimes crises are such that needs to happen right away, or else someone else is going to tell their version, and it may sound more like LA's version than Houston's.
Well, Steve, that's such a critical component, because The CIO for LA Unified and I, we talk quite often, and at the end of the day, they were behind in communicating and getting ahead of the story. So the story was written, and it was written from the version that whoever was writing it thought it was. And so one of the things that, again, I talked about with that group that I have working on this project, we have had the bumps in the road. The difference is we were the ones out ahead of the story, so it wasn't a story. And so that was one of the lessons learned, when I saw LA and I talked to them, and that's when I contrasted back to our project team, is by the time they identified a potential bump, when I walked into the room, they already had their communication message, strategy, ready to roll out. LA, it took them 3 weeks to come up with, here is our side of the story. And by that time, you're so far away from playing offense, you're never going to get that ball back.
One of our listeners has also commented about this. She feels like their district has kind of already let the cat out of the bag with their one-to-one initiative without all the good branding and strategies that y'all have mentioned. Is it too late for them, or should they go back and try to create a brand and do some of the things that you've talked about? Would it be too late for them?
I don't think it's ever too late to get an identity around your project, and here's why, especially if they're trying to do one-to-one, because it's so comprehensive. And so, for instance, Power Up right now, Power Up is the umbrella from which we have the Power Up Device Initiative. We have what we're calling the Power Up Hub, which is our teaching and learning platform, which all of our digital content is going to go up underneath. We're going to have Power Up Instruction. So that brand now has allowed us to link in all of these other initiatives so people can start making the connections. So it's not about the device. It's about content. It's about instruction. And so I don't think it's ever too late to come back. In fact, it might be an opportunity for that school district to really take a step back and say, whatever brand we want to come up with, make sure that it's one that a number of our strategic initiatives can roll up underneath. So as the community, they can start making these linkages, because that's one of the things we often struggle with in education is our parents hear about all of these projects and all these initiatives, but they don't understand how it all fits together. If you do your brand correctly, you start making those puzzle pieces fit together for them in a very clear and concise way.
And I would add, Lenny, it's not a one-time thing. This initiative, if it's a systemic initiative, it's going to be going on, for, the foreseeable future, and therefore you do have that time to recover and rebrand.
Absolutely.
That's great advice. I want to ask you all now a personal question, because as we started out this presentation, this was really about help for CTOs and how they engage their community. And Steve, you talked about it earlier, that typically IT departments aren't known for their good communication. So I want you to all to think about, what have you all done specifically as a CTO to become a good communicator? What are some hints you can give other CTOs?
So I'll jump up on this. I think for me, I've always had the philosophical belief that technology is a service organization, and that is the cornerstone from which we build everything on. And the only way you can truly be a good service organization is to really be able to communicate with the business about what they think the priority is. And so, for me, it's always been about understanding what the expectations are from the business and being able to then go back and tell my department, here's what the priority is and here's why it's a priority, and then establishing those linkages not only at my level, but throughout every level of the organization. So we're all very clear in what our goals and objectives are, and the only way you can provide great service is if you're communicating, because I've never heard of a service organization who was considered good that had crappy communication. So I think it's a building block, this mentality of a good service organization. It's a building block that really mandates and facilitates good communication. And for me, the other thing is, it's why I love being the CIO, it affords me the opportunity to sit with my business partners, my divisional partners, and hear them talk about what they're trying to accomplish or what their pain points are, and pointing out how I can make their job easier. And once you start to establish that rapport and you build that credibility with what you're saying you're actually delivering, it makes the job so much more fun. And so I think for me, it's about that service mentality, and it's about making the organization see the value that you can bring to them, not only in the big projects, but just making their day-to-day job easier.
I couldn't agree more, Lenny. Service, it's all about service, and communication goes hand in hand with that every day. I think making that leap maybe for some CIOs, maybe, or directors, may be kind of a struggle initially, because, once you open that line of communication, you may be afraid of, what may come back at you or what people may say, but you're not going to improve unless you do that, and you have to do that.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'm just going to add, too, that I think becoming a part of a CETL study group, that's the Certified Educational Technology Leader, and looking at COSIN's resources, like you all mentioned earlier, I think are great opportunities for CTOs as well. Well, our time together has come to a close, so I'd like for you all to look for an email with the CTO Community Engagement Tip Sheet and a webinar recording soon. And if you have any further questions, you can feel free to email us. The next slide shows our emails, and you can email any of us if you have any further questions, or look for that email coming to you with the link to the recording. So thank you all for attending today, and we hope you found this webinar to be beneficial. And thank you, Lenny and Steve, for all your great advice. Enjoy the rest of your day.